18, 19 years old. He's in Canada, in Toronto. He basically goes to some party. He's hanging out, dancing, living a modest life. Was running track, lives at home with his mom, doesn't have much to do. Goes to some party and sees this girl in this fucking club, like dancing and holding the phone up to herself as she's dancing the whole night. And he asked one of his friends, like, yo, why is that girl keep recording herself and not just like, what is she doing with that phone? And someone tells him she's on an app called Vine, and she has 500,000 people following her on Vine. And he's like, what the fuck is Vine, right? So he goes over to her, kicks the conversation off with her. He asks her, what is Vine? She shows him this app thing that's brand new on the phone. It's like no one knows what it is. He's intrigued by it. He goes home, looks it up, starts trying to research a little bit. A couple days later, he gets her phone number and asks her, can she meet with him and tell him, because he's intrigued by what it is. She shows him what this thing is. Long story short, 1 month later, he has 1 million followers on Vine. He goes on to break the Guinness Book of World Records for the biggest social media presence of all time on Vine. All right. I think he has 1 billion or 2 billion streams on a Vine thing, right? He goes on to become, that launches him into every other app you could think of. He becomes the biggest influencer we've ever seen, right? That is not a celebrity, okay? Yep. So what happens is, as he discovers Vine, he also is one of the first people to take an iPhone and use it in this way, right? So Steve Jobs, I think he meets Steve Jobs. He ends up becoming the first kid to like take an application and start applying it and making what we now call social media, King Bach, all right? The story is, they had pitched me a story about him while I was on set. I pitched back a story to him like, yo, I know what your show is. They were trying to tell me Entourage. I said, it's not Entourage. Your show is 2012, an 18-year-old kid picks up an iPhone. It's black tech. And it is Entourage a little bit. It's a rag to riches story about how this kid became the biggest influencer in the world. And it's the ups and downs. It's the story about how he went from nobody and a regular person to picking up a phone and basically starting to do these funny comedy skits that I think Vine was like 6 seconds at the time or something. Yeah. And he goes from making these little things to becoming like so massive that he can't even walk down the street. So what he was doing was, to create the Vines, he got a group of friends and buddies with him. And basically what they did all day long is basically get in the room and create these Vine skits and shoot them. It was like work, you know what I mean? And to show that, and then to also show that in that year, 2012, you got Steve Jobs showing the iPhone, like this little device right here is gonna change the world, and apps being created. And so the show would follow him to 2012 till now, right? Because the same way he broke Vine is the same way he broke Twitter, is the same way he broke TikTok, is the same way he broke Instagram, right? Like it's the same repetitive thing. So he goes from a fucking 1-bedroom apartment to walking the red carpet at the Oscars because he has created a social media presence. Right. And so I'm like, yo, this is a show I'm interested in, right? Because although it's a bit of a period piece, it is relevant to right now. There's a kid somewhere in the room discovering TikTok that's going to be bigger than everybody else. You know what I mean? And so you could identify with him in 2012. You could see him go from rags to riches. You could see him creating software, but also the backdrop of the show is him understanding later, like, a year or two after he has 50 million or 60 million people following him on this thing, realizing that other people that are using the social media now, he has now ushered in another dark side to this, right? The Vine of people slapping each other, the Vine of people doing stunts, the Vine of, girls getting beat up, the Vine of evilness, right? And then Then that turns into the first shooting on Vine. You know what I mean? So he is like watching this thing he thinks is fun and funny turn into another way. So he has a lot of weight on him as a kid. You know what I mean? And so this is the show. I wanted to make a one sheet to present to them. You know, I love the idea of the backdrop of like an entourage, him. And what's great is like his sister becomes his manager, right? Like his friend is his business partner. You know what I mean? They begin to discover the first ever, they get the first endorsement deals from Microsoft and Apple. They're seeing apps before apps are created. You know what I mean? And then eventually he comes to the USA from Toronto, and he's a big giant fucking star. So I'm like, this is Entourage, but black tech. So if I was to trace Entourage, I would be like, yeah, we're gonna kind of steal that model and put it with him. But we've never seen a kid it's not sports, it's not rapping, it's not, you know, some athlete. It's basically a kid with a phone in his hand that changes the course of his life. Right. And to me, that's black tech. And we've never seen that show. And now he's a multimillionaire, you know, has deals everywhere. He's now entering the NFT world where he is fucking on fire. He has a gigantic following. And he told me the other day, he said, look, he showed me on his phone. He's like, Deon, like probably in the next 6 months, he was like, I'm going to sell all the stuff I have. It's going to be probably worth $18 million in NFTs I've collected. So I'm like, well, how do you get the money? He was like, I'm one of only a few people that understand how to get the money out. So I'm like, well, how do you get the money out? So he started showing, I said, I don't know none of that shit. Like he now knows how to buy the coins, get the stuff, and where to sell the shit at to a certain amount of underground people to get the money out. And he's like, people that buying all this shit, they don't know how to get out. And I'm showing you how to get out. So look, I'm gonna follow his lead because he's been cutting edge for 20 years. You know what I mean? So
okay, so this is a real, like you're basing this on someone who actually exists?
Him.
Andrew Bachelor.
Okay. Oh my God. Okay. So all right. I thought this was all fictionalized. I didn't know that this was actually.
No, it's a real kid. That's his name, King Bach.
Got it. Okay. All right. Cool.
So now he then went from doing that stuff to he has starred in movies opposite Gerard Butler, Mike Epps, Cat Williams. He's been in
million commercials.
Every commercial, national commercials, Jack in the Box campaigns, Mountain Dew campaigns. I mean, Nike, Adidas. I mean, he is a gigantic. This kid started this with a fucking phone.
Yeah,
it's crazy. So you can.
I know who he is. I just looked him up. I know exactly who he is.
You can see the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like you can see it's the same as Entourage with what's it, Vinny or whatever his name was, like Vinny Chase, like
Vincent Chase, yeah.
Like basically him coming to LA with an idea with his group and becoming Aquaman. But except this is real.